got a bit of a hint in the title for this question of what we need to use. So, how is the Pythagorean theorem coming up? It's because the two ships are going at a 90-degree angle to each other, one going due east. We'll call the distance that it goes x, because the one that is going due south, we're given a comparison of that distance x going 140 miles more than that going due south. After several hours, they started at the same time, they travel for the same amount of time, and after several hours they are 340 miles apart. So we want to find out what our x and x plus 140. Well, Pythagorean theorem for right triangles is telling us that the sum of the squares of the legs is equal to the square of the hypotenuse. So we've got x squared plus the quantity x plus 140, all of that squared, would equal 340 squared. I've already worked out that calculation. We've got on the right hand side 115,600. And before we can go too much further, we're going to have to simplify the part with x plus 140, that quantity being squared. You could either write parentheses x plus 140 times another parentheses x plus 140, or refer to the formula for squaring a binomial. And either way, what we're going to get, besides this x squared that we already had, when we square this part, x squared plus 280x plus 140 times itself, in other words squaring it, is giving us 11, it's giving us 19,600. So I'm going to combine these like terms. And since all of these numbers are even, I'm going to divide all of them by 2. So it's going to give us x squared plus 140x, then 19,600 divided by 2, that's going to give us 9,800. And the 115,600, dividing that by 2, we're going to get 57,800. This is something that might be factorable, or that we could use the quadratic formula for. But since I was able to get a 1x squared easily, and the coefficient of x to the first is even, I'm going to go ahead and use the completing the square method. So we'll get the variable terms alone on one side, subtract 9,800 from the other side, and I'm getting 48,000. If we do 2 steps of side work arithmetic on the side, 1/2 times 140 gives us 70. We're going to see that 70 again, but then we square that and get 4,900. That's telling us what to add to both sides, because that's going to give us on the left hand side a perfect square trinomial. But when I add it on the right hand side, I'm getting 52,900. The perfect square trinomial on the left can be rewritten as a binomial squared. Since the 140 was being added, the step in A, that 70 is positive, and so we have x plus 70 in the binomial squared. Luckily, what we have on the right hand side is a perfect square. So when we apply the square root property on the left hand side, it cancels. Can't forget the plus or minus. The square root of 52,900 is 230. So I'll subtract the 70 to isolate x. Obviously, the subtraction case is going to lead to something rejected. The idea that the eastbound ship would be going negative 300 miles doesn't compute. So instead, add the 230. It's going to give us 160 miles for the ship that is eastbound. And add 140 to that. We'll find out how far the southbound ship is going. And that's going to give us a total of 300 miles. Southbound ship is going 300 miles. So, as a check, you could make sure that 160 squared plus 300 squared, do the squaring first and then the addition, does that actually equal 340 squared? I'm going to check that real quick, but I encourage you to type it in yourself and make sure that you're also seeing the same thing. I do get that those two sides are equal.